Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? So today I wanted to answer a question that I surprisingly get asked a lot, which is how am I using my external synths and recording them into Ableton Live, but then also still opening up the filter and adjusting their sound after I've recorded them in. And I think there might be a bit of confusion because I've talked about this before, but I kind of glance over how I set this all up. So that's what I wanted to cover. Essentially, it's not recorded audio just yet. It's mainly just MIDI using an external instrument track. So let's figure out how I set it up from scratch, from the beginning, jam a little bit, and see why this is beneficial, especially setting up a second audio track to record that track's audio and the benefit of that. Oh, and by the way, today's video sponsor is Squarespace, but more on them later. All right, so from the very beginning, what we need to do is either connect our synthesizer with MIDI or USB. The easiest way that I find to do this is either with something like this, which this is the Digital Life. I have a link to it down below. It's a MIDI to USB converter, right? And this is for your older synthesizers that might not have USB MIDI. Luckily for me, I mainly use the Peak, or in this case, I'm going to be using the Grandmother, which allow me to connect its USB port directly to my computer to receive MIDI over USB, not audio, just MIDI. So what you want to make sure you have set is in your link tempo MIDI tab of your preferences, which I got to quickly by hitting Command and less than bracket. I think that's less than, maybe greater than. Ooh, I don't know. And in here, in our input as well as our output, I want to track the Moog Grandmother. You can see I got a bunch of other stuff here. That's because this one cable is going to a USB hub that connects all of this stuff, right? And some stuff I have over 5-pin, but we don't need to worry about that right now. So my Moog Grandmother is set to track. You can set the output, basically information going from Ableton Live to whatever synthesizer you are using. That's going to be your output section. Track will allow us to send note information sequenced from Ableton Live to our synthesizer. And the same works in reverse. If we go and look at our Moog Grandmother in section, I can play notes on the Grandmother's keyboard and record those notes in as MIDI. And that's very important if you're going to be doing this with something like the Moog Grandmother or anything that has a keyboard on it. It's not so important when you're doing something like a desktop synthesizer, like the Nymphs or whatever, or Peak, because there's no keyboard, you're not going to be playing it, you only need to be sending notes to it. So for this case, I have that turned on. When it comes to our sync, you could, I'm not sure if you can sync anything on the Moog Grandmother to the tempo, but that's what this will be. I have sync turned on, for example, for Peak, which is currently not connected, but what that will allow me to do is set the LFOs to be synced up with the tempo of whatever my song is. And the last section is remote, and this will allow me to send MIDI CC messages or control change messages or CC numbers, right? Control change numbers. That just kind of means the parameters, like the knobs. So I can set like CC27 to change the filter of my Moog Grandmother and stuff like that. I usually don't have this stuff turned on, and I'll show you why later, because that kind of comes in part with the audio track that I use separate to record this external instrument track, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete this Grandmother track, and what we wanna do is right-click and insert a new MIDI track. Remember, if you're new to all this, learn all these shortcuts. They're extremely valuable and save you a ton of time. We got a new MIDI track. Here, I can either hit Command F and I can type in EXT, and this will take us to external instrument. If I drag this over, boom, we now have an external instrument, like an Ableton Live instrument within this MIDI track. This is what I use to send MIDI notes from Ableton Live to my synthesizers and hear the audio back without having to deal with much latency. Keyword much, because there's always some sort of latency. This is also important to remember that under your preferences, again, Command, this left bracket thing, whatever this is called, make sure that your audio driver error compensation is set up appropriately. I have a video on how to do that here. Be sure to check that out. Very important. Mine's already set up. So for this external instrument, I'm going to name this Moog Gma. So that's this, right? Moog Gma. And what's our MIDI going to? You can see here that the Moog grandmother pops up. This is awesome. What's the MIDI channel number? We're going to set it to 1. That's what the Moog grandmother is set to. Now this is important. Where is the audio coming from? So this is serving two purposes. It's sending notes out of Ableton Live, and then it's receiving audio back in. So here, what's the audio coming from? Well, I'd like to open up this drop-down menu right here, and then I just hit some notes, and you can see right here, 15. Right? Let's do that one more time in case I went a little too quick. We'll say audio from, and I can see number 15 is kind of bumping up and down, so we're going to select that. Cool. And if we wanted to take this one step further, if we look at this little I/O tab here, it's not showing because I have my screen in geezer mode, right? But if I take away, let's say, our returns and sends, and will that allow me to open up our I/O? There, this. If you see this section here, the MIDI from, also if you hit tab, you have access to it here. But let's focus in on this side. MIDI from, I can even say, take MIDI only from the Moog grandmother. This is kind of beneficial in case you have a bunch of other things with a bunch of keyboards and sequencers going that are all sending track information, right, in that MIDI tab, that track information to Ableton Live. Because if I don't have this and I have it set to all ins, I might accidentally be playing my launch key, trying to play some other synth, but then playing the Moog grandmother at the same time. This can lead to some fun, happy accidents because you could start layering synth sounds, but that's not what we want right now. What I do want, though, is I can say Moog grandmother. That way, if I do play the launch key, nothing happens. But if I play the Moog, we're good. But you also need to make sure that your record arm is enabled, because if, let's say we have another MIDI track here and I play the Moog grandmother, we'll hear it, but it won't be recording any MIDI notes into it. Does that make sense? And the other thing to note is because this MIDI track is set to MIDI from all ins, this, let's say there was an analog on here. Whoa, just typed a word that I'm gonna get banned for. Whoa, listen to that beautiful tuning. Geez, is my Moog that far off? Let's see. Bro, that's supposed to be a C. What are you doing? How did we get to that point? Anyway, like I was saying, careful because you might be layering some stuff up. So anyway, that's besides the point, right? I'm going off on a tangent here of all the different pitfalls. Let's do a quick recap and then we'll get into recording some sounds. So we're going to open up our preferences. Boom. Go to your MIDI tab. Make sure that you have track for your input and your output of your synthesizer set up so that you can receive notes and send notes to your synthesizer. Using an external instrument inside of a MIDI track, we're going to send MIDI to the grandmother on its appropriate channel, in this case channel 1. Then we're going to take audio from our audio interface, which our Moog grandmother is plugged into the Focusrite, and we're going to find out which one it's plugged into. In this case, it's 15. We're going to select 15. Now, why this is beneficial is because if we get rid of our I/O, get rid of this tuner, I can just hit record and say, right, cool. I just recorded a bunch of random notes. I hit this, and I have the recorded MIDI information here. So I can do this, select them all, maybe quantize them. Right, that didn't work out so well. Let's get a finer grid. Right, now I can go and edit this sequence. Cool, but now I can also go right, do you hear what I'm saying? That's why I like doing this, because I can set the notes down, get the groove going before I kind of lose the vibe of where I want to go with this, and then I can shape up the sound later. And what's even more fun with this kind of setup is if I were to just do something like just slap the keys essentially and just say I went, right? Cool, I'm the best keyboard player this side of Herbie Hancock. Listen to that, amazing, right? Not amazing at all. But what I can do is I can say quantize. Yo. And then I can do something weird like say, let's get 3 bars and loop that. And then just kind of scan around. Right, let's do 4 bars. Find one of those high notes. Right, let's make this this long, whatever, 6 bars or 6 measures, whatever beats. Right, and now I can just go and mess around with this. Oh, and before I forget, now that we have this whole external instrument thing set up, right, with the appropriate MIDI to and audio from, let's go ahead and hit this floppy disk, and we can actually save this to our user library as an instrument that we can recall whenever we want. So I can just drag and drop this over, and boom, within here it'll have these settings, but I do not think it saves the I/O. This would be more within your default template, so just remember this part here. But this is great in case you don't want to have a long default like I do, where I have a bunch of different tracks already set up. I usually leave all my stuff within the default track, not so much in the user templates, but if you work this way, it's a great way to kind of declutter your workspace. Okay, you with me so far? This is why this is so fun, because I can slap a keyboard, edit my notes, quantize them, and I know I go against this a lot of the times, but not commit to any audio just yet. But when you commit to audio, this is where this gets even more fun, because these are all just kind of creative tools. And when you start committing to audio, that's when this kind of turns into this weird resampling, mangling type of thing that I love messing around with and finding new rhythms within those rhythms, and just kind of creating new parts out of the same part in a weird way, and new sounds that are kind of similar. I mean, we'll get to this and I'll explain this a little bit more. But first, let me give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Squarespace. In case you're not familiar with Squarespace, it's an incredibly easy to use all-in-one website designer, hosting platform, and so much more. I've been using Squarespace for years now, long before I had this YouTube channel. So when they reached out to sponsor a few videos, of course, I took the opportunity. It's currently where I host all my merch like hats, shirts, sample packs, synth presets, and even a contact me page. It's never been easier to get a professional looking website within a few clicks at such an affordable price. Some of my favorite features on Squarespace are the customized email links that expire within 24 hours. So when you're selling digital goods like music or videos, you don't need to worry about changing or chasing down links in case they get shared around. The website builder is also awesome, with gorgeous templates to start from that you can easily tweak to make them feel like your own. For example, I'm using the Event Horizon template on my website, and within a few clicks, I was easily able to add a couple extra pages and remove a couple to make it really feel like mine. And trust me, I'd said this before, but I'd never be able to make a site look this good on my own. And lastly, all the extensions and third-party integrations that Squarespace has with other companies that help you run your business or your brand. These can help you facilitate your shipping, product design, taxes, and so much more. I've been using and taking advantage of all of them. Again, it's crazy how simple Squarespace makes it. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in starting your site or taking your music or artistry to the next level, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Or when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, let's get back into it. Okay, so Like I said, you don't have to commit to any audio just yet, but there are a couple ways of kind of finishing this, because it's important to know that whatever settings we have on the Moog Grandmother or whatever synthesizer you're currently on, this clip here does hold, where is it at? I forget where they place it. It's under launch. This clip here has your program change information. There's no programs on a Moog Grandmother, so it doesn't relate to me too much here. But if you're using something like a peak, I save this session, I go about my day, come back, turn peak on, it's on a different patch. This ain't gonna remember what patch I'm on unless I do something with this program change number down here. So I don't like messing with that at all. What I like to do is before I save, this forces me to, you guessed it, commit to audio. Open up a new audio track, and this is super duper important. We'll look at our I/O. We want to take audio from Moog Gma, this right here, this track, and have audio set to off. If I arm this, you can see that the audio is coming in right here. Let me, you need to calm down, my friend. Yeah. Whew. Yes. Hold on, one second. Yes, please. Yo, this is dope. So simple. So simple. Okay, where was I? Open up a new audio track. Select audio from Moog Grandmother. That's where we're at. Pose mixer, everything. What this is going to do is essentially say, okay, all these different settings, if we have reverb, sidechain, all that stuff, it's going to record all of that for us. When this is set to off, and the reason we set Moog Grandma is because this audio external instrument track is handling all the latency compensation stuff for us. So we're not going to have to go back and change and slide our recordings around. But again, this is heavily reliant on making sure your driver error compensation is set up correctly. So press that little I in the corner to see that video. It's very, very important. It's boring. It takes a little bit, maybe like 5-10 minutes, but it's great for handling and helping with audio latency issues inside Ableton Live. So now that we have this, I can hit record here, and I'll just grab that, right? Whatever that is. I'll stop this. And if I zoom into here, you can see that this is super dead on the money, right? Some might argue there might be a tiny tad bit early. It could be swing, it could be just MIDI jitter, who knows? But I can mute this Moog Grandma track, and now all that we're listening to is the recorded version of this. And if I were to go and say, let's get rid of our I/O, drag this clip down here, I can just select this little section here, hit Command L, and then launch that. Right? And just kind of find these like weird, maybe like a weird, but see, you can hear there's way too much reverb on this. I'm gonna launch this again, unmute it, and just record in another clip. And then just open up the filter. All right, we'll stop the MIDI track. Now we got this little track here. Go ahead, same thing, loop it around. Maybe select a weird 3-bar loop within that weird 8-ish bar plus loop thing that we had going on there. Maybe find this. Yeah, that's dope right there. Now we'll add a little bit of reverb after we've recorded that, right? To kind of bring in that spring reverb that we had on there, but not quite as good. maybe a pre-delay of about 160. Right, so now we are committing to that audio, and we have a couple different ideas, and I can even go into here and say, cool, what does this weird little section sound like if I just open up this last section and I rename this all out, right? So we go from this little part, right? And then we bring in this little hi-hat part, take the kick out. Now I'm performing these weird different parts that I wouldn't otherwise be able to play. I mean, I would be able to play, but it might be a little sloppy, right? Let's see what this first pattern was. You get it? You get what I'm talking about? I mean, come on. This is... Come on. I'm so down with it. Oh, wrong bass line. Anyway, that's it, right? It's as easy as that. Again, quick recap. MIDI preferences, plug it in. Use the external instrument track. Set those settings appropriately. Then when you're ready, open up a new audio track and take the audio from this track specifically. Do not take it from this input. Don't go into here and say take audio from external in track 15, because that's going to be recorded way too early, because this external instrument track is doing the latency error compensation stuff for us. And again, check out that other video if you need to set your driver error compensation appropriately. From there, you can start recording new tracks, set your monitor to off, and just go crazy. Do a bunch of whatever you want to do. It doesn't even matter anymore. Just have fun, because that's all that this is, and I'm having a blast right here. Yo, what is that, right? Let's take this one clip that we have here and pitch it up like crazy. Make it super plucky. And then let's say sawtooth. Right? And you can just start layering, doing a bunch of whatever you want, and just keep recording. Just press record. That's all I ask. Just press record. Anyway, I think that covers it. I hope you had a great time, because I sure did. You're welcome back anytime. I'm gonna jam a little bit more on this thing, because this thing is gnarly. And yeah, until next week, my friend, I hope to see you again. Until then, share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace.